Okay, so Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry, I've just been interacting with our guest speaker, and inshallah, he will be with us shortly. Um, Before he comes in, just let me take this 2 minutes to read through his profile, and I'm sure majority of us know the personality that we are meeting today. We wouldn't like to take much of his time, so um, I would just like to read a bit of his profile so that some of us who were not able to get to read it on their emails will also have the opportunity to hear it from us, inshallah. Our speaker is a long-standing distinguished um, a person, uh, a personality or Islamic scholar and a political activist and civil society leader and thinker. And he's from Nigeria, initially trained as a pharmacist. His postgraduate studies had included an MA in the Interdisciplinary Social Science Program of Africa Studies at Institute of African and Asian Studies, that's the University of Khartoum, that is in Sudan, and a doctorate in intellectual history of West Africa, focusing on tradition of Tajdid in Western Bilad, Sudan, from the same institution in Sudan. He has served as special advisor on political affairs to the Nigerian Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar in the vice presidency of 1999 to 2003. And in 2003, he was elected to represent the Keita Jibaya Federal Constituency at the Federal House of Representatives, that is in Nigeria, where he chaired the House Committee on Foreign Affairs until 2007. Our speaker was appointed the National Secretary of the Action Congress, where he worked to institutionalize democratic reforms and greater participation of women. He contested for the governorship of Katsina State under the Action Congress. Katsina State, of course, in Nigeria. In 2016, he declined an offer from President Buhari to consider an ambassadorial appointment. He is a long-standing distinguished visitor in African politics programs of African Studies, that's at John Hopkins, SAIS. His contribution to civil society include convenership of the Arewa Research and Development Project, that is ARDP, a public policy group that is promoting policies to restore stable governance and stimulate economic renewal in the northern states of Nigeria. He has also been a member of the governing board of IRCICA, Research Center for Islamic History, Art and Culture. He is also the founding chairman of Network for Justice, an advocacy group concerned with civil education, consumer and human rights. He was also been prominent in the work of the Islam in Africa organization and later the Transition Monitoring Group, that is TMG, the first indigenous election monitoring group, which monitored the 1999 elections in Nigeria, of course. Our speaker is an author of numerous books and is an author of numerous book reviews published in the Muslim world. And he is also a presenter of a number of papers at conferences and academic articles as well. Definitely every one of us here by now, particularly our Nigerian participants, would know the personality we are about to listen to, and he is none other than Dr. Usman Bugaje. He's my father, my mentor, and one of my elders call him the philosopher king. I got to know about this a couple of days ago, and I think all of us listening to him today, inshallah, will attest to this. Dr. Usman Bogaji, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, your audience, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmah. Sheikhna, let me say that Imam S.A.I.D has been extremely generous, and I take it that what he has been saying about me is a prayer, that I will become what he's actually saying. I mean, I'm still struggling, trying to learn as much as I can in the very difficult circumstances in which we live. So let me not take too much time. Let's try to go straight to the topic. I understand this is a kind of pep talk, a discussion that will hopefully encourage us to read more and to broaden our horizon of things that are important, to us. So my idea is to use 3 passages of the Quran, and this way I want to, shall I say, suggest to us as many issues that are important that we want to discuss. We can always find relevant, very profound passages of the Quran that speak to these issues, so that we can remain as Muslims guided by the Quran in everything that we do. Now, the topic given is developing a Muslim personality in the contemporary world. I have to assume that the idea is not to discuss personality as a psychological level, at the level of psychology, but more perhaps at the level of sociology. When you discuss personality at the level of sociology, we are looking at basically the character, the behavioral traits that Muslims should have or should define the Muslim personality in the contemporary world. I will operate, or I will take that as the operational. Can we?
Sorry, yes. Oh, sorry. So you can kindly mute yourself, sir. Unmute yourself, sir. I just need to unmute. Mute.
Okay, yes, I have unmuted myself. Yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
So basically, what I want to do is to discuss those. Muslim personality from the point of view of sociology. That's the characteristics, which we know there are basically 2 types of characteristics, or 2 broad categories. The characteristics that are natural, that the characteristics that are natural and intrinsic in the human nature, and characteristics those that are natural and intrinsic are usually instinctive, while those that we acquire them through cognition. Now, the fact that we acquire them through the process of reasoning and learning and thinking, it gives them the advantage of being able to tamper with, or to be able to control, or to be able to influence those natural instincts. So in other words, those that we acquire, can be quite higher if they are properly developed, because they will be able to temper and control the instincts, as we will be able to see towards the end of the discussion. So what basically I want to do, I want to start with some questions. I know we may not have the interactive, perhaps, if you like, facility, but ideally I would have started with questions, because this is the style of the Quran. Human mind works best when it is called upon to answer questions, or when it is called upon to reflect. When it is at rest without any challenge, it's at its lowest level. When there is a challenge to it, to think, to reflect, or questions are asked, then human mind becomes much better because it rises to the occasion. This is the way human mind is wired. And I would have loved to ask the audience, what do you, how do you define life? What is death? And what is life? I would not wait for answers because, as I said, perhaps we have to unmute everybody and then we may have interruptions in between. But I take it that most people are familiar with some of these issues. But when you are asked to define them, then you begin to see the difficulties in the definition. But what that does is it helps you to now realize, that you need more clarity in the things that you assume you know. And this is the objective. If those familiar with the Quran would know that when the Quran is going to bring a profound truth, it doesn't just drop it. It first prepares the mind of, the audience, or the listener or the reader, about certain things that he should reflect, so that the mind will be tuned or will be developed to a level where it can comprehend the truth that is going to come. There are many examples. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء إذا بناها والأرض إذا طاها والنفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها. This is the message. But before the message, man is asked to think about the sun, to think about the moon, to think about the celestial bodies, to think about so many other things, so that his mind will be prepared to comprehend the information, the profound truth that is going to be given to him. Similarly, إذا السماء انفطرت وإذا الكواكب انتثرت وإذا البحار فجرت وإذا القبور بعثرت علمت نفس ما قدمت وأخرت يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم. This is the message at the end. But then it starts with a scene where the sky, it's like broken into pieces. The graves have been turned upside down, like people being ejected out of their graves. The oceans bursting beyond their bounds. All this kind of scenario will now make the mind to start imagining. This is, of course, the day of judgment. But the question basically that the Quran wants to prepare your mind for, يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك في أي سورة ما شاء ركبك. These are the styles of the Quran. You find it a lot. I wouldn't want to spend too much time on this, but it's important we use some of the methods of the Quran because, of course, Quran is from Allah. Allah created the world, created the man, so he knows how man is wired and how he would, respond, to the truth and to the kind of information. So it's important we do that, and that's why. But the question I would have wished to dwell on, like I said, is to ask you, how do you define death? Perhaps we know death. People die and we bury them, right? We are also going to die. We're going to be buried, hopefully. So the point is, what is death? If you are asked to define death, cessation of life, okay, what is life? How do you define life? We think we know life because we are living now, we are talking, we are listening, we are, recognizing our environment, we can relate to it, we can respond to stimulus, right? If you go back to biological definition. But really, what is life? So I'm raising this question just to show that you need clarity in many things you assume you know. And I'm going to basically say a few things about life. Life is sometimes defined in terms of time, meaning he has lived a long life, right? So this is time. Or he lived a short life. And so life can be determined in terms of how long you live, right? 100 years, 50 years, some live 2 years. So this is one way of defining time. Time can also be in terms of uh, the quality. What are you going to be remembered for? What have you been able to do? How much impact have you made during your stay on this earth? What are you going to be remembered for? Sayyidina Musa will be remembered, alayhi salam, for taking people out and saving them from the Fir'aun. Fir'aun, on the other hand, will be remembered for his atrocities, for the dictatorial and the tyrannical rule that he has. So what do you want to be remembered for? Because we are all going to go anyway. In الساعة آتية أكاد أخفيها لتجزى كل نفس بما تسعى. I mean, so many references to this, and nobody would know when it is time for him to go. So what are you going to be remembered for? What do you want people to say after you would have gone? Perhaps what you do will make people pray for you, or what you do will make people curse you. So what exactly are your choices? What do you want to choose, if you like? Another way of defining time is how many problems have you been able to solve? How many obstacles have you been able to cross? How many problems have you been able to find solutions to? There can be small problems by some people, there can be big problems, but this is just to say that there are several metrics of uh, evaluating time, several metrics of basically measuring what you have. Now, I brought this out just to show that as Muslims, we should find out what are the metrics, because that is going to be part of that personality, and these metrics can be related to the time in which we live. In other words, even though there are generic metrics, but there must be specific, because we are all living within our own time. We are living within a context, and we cannot ignore the context in which we're living, because that's how we're going to be evaluated. Now, my first section of the talk is to refer us to the uh, first 5 ayahs of the Quran, first 5 ayahs of Surah Ibrahim. Some of you are perhaps familiar with it. It starts with Alif Lam Ra. كتاب أنزلناه إليك لتخرج الناس من الظلمات إلى النور بإذن ربهم إلى صراط العزيز الحميد الله الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وويل للكافرين من عذاب شديد الذين يستحبون الحياة الدنيا على الآخرة ويصدون عن سبيل الله ويبغونها عوجا أولئك في ضلال بعيد وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا بلسان قومه ليبين لهم فيدل الله من يشاء ويهدي من يشاء وهو العزيز الحكيم ولقد أرسلنا موسى بآياتنا أن أخرج قومك من الظلمات إلى النور وذكرهم بأيام الله إن في ذلك لآيات لكل صبار شكور. These 5 ayahs, you will notice that an expression من الظلمات إلى النور was repeated, meaning it came in the first ayah and it also came in the 5th ayah where our selected passage stops. Now, the first ayah speaks to the fact that this book, referring to the Quran, has been brought down to you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to humanity, so that you can get people out of the darkness to the light of life, of course with the permission of Allah, and that is the straight and right path. Now this idea of bringing people out of darkness to life is very important one. And I want to say a few things about it. And it's, I think, key to our understanding of our own personality. Because Islam is often seen as a restrictive kind of a restrictive code. You don't drink, you don't fornicate, you don't steal, you don't waste your time in useless entertainment, you don't do this, you don't do this. So this is how it comes across, especially in a world which has already been dominated by a culture which is not only secular, but also that is based on a pursuit of false happiness, a culture that is that is geared towards what you might call enjoyment of whatever. So because of that, Islam is seen as a kind of restrictive. But in actual fact, what Islam is trying to do is actually to liberate people from a life of animal where you just eat and drink and mate and just spend time without purpose in life. So the real liberation is the, if you like, move or the shift from an animal kind of life to a life that has meaning, to a life that can give you true happiness, to a life where you live very well here, like the popular prayer, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana. This is what Islam is basically trying to do. So we'll come to the issue of what exactly constitutes happiness if we have time. But it's important that we realize, I mean, we make the point that this ayah is making reference to a fundamental role of Islam, which is to take people away from a life that is hedonistic, if you like, which is completely based on pleasure. And everything that you see, the marketing, the live, you know, when things are being sold out to you, it's all pleasure. The whole marketing is geared towards, you know, that intrinsic tendency in you to want to be happy, to want to enjoy, even though, as we know, it doesn't really give you. When you get there where you are being promised happiness, it's then that you discover that the happiness is not actually there. It becomes a mirage. And this is why people have to continue consuming alcohol, because it gives them a temporary escape from reality, which gives them relief. You know, people have to continue on drugs, because again, once they are out of that drugs, then they come back to a life of unhappiness, and so they become hooked. So, but Islam wants to liberate you, you know, to that. And then Islam also wants to emphasize, and this is the second ayah, that this world in which we live, in which we look for happiness, actually doesn't belong to us. We didn't create it. It belongs to Allah. I know after the Enlightenment period in Europe, following Renaissance, the European mind, especially their intellectuals, thought that they can do without. That's how they knocked off God from the, if you like, the hierarchy of being, and man sat in that position as having the ability to know everything and the ability to do everything without any assistance. Of course, we know this is false, and we know it has not. And God, from time to time, tells man that he doesn't really own the world. And I think the corona virus is one of many such examples, because it has crippled everybody. And then everybody has, I mean, God through corona has shown the weaknesses, you know, of man. his inability, his helplessness, so to speak. And he has done so in such a way that resonates or that reminds you of the ayah of the Quran in Baqarah that says, إن الله لا يستحي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وأما الذين كفروا فيقولون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا يضل به كثيرا ويهدي به كثيرا وما يضل به إلا الفاسقون. Meaning essentially that Allah will not shy away from bringing number of examples from time to time. And sometimes he will bring an example with something that is so tiny and yet so profound and yet so game-changing. And it is this way that Allah guides and allows others to fall, as to go astray. But those that he guides are those that are ready for guidance, and those fasiqin are the ones that actually get lost. The point I'm making here is that the world belongs to Allah. And because it belongs to Allah and we're Allah's creation and we have a role that Allah has defined, it is for us to find out what is that role that God wants to play. If anybody thinks that he creates the world, then that's for him to really prove to us. I mean, if he can't solve the problem of corona, then it means that there are things that are beyond him. So the point I'm making is we need to know where we are, and we need to know. And this is what the second ayah talks about. The third ayah is talking about a very important thing, that the characteristic of the kuffar, as different from those of the Muslim, is among them, and the first thing to be mentioned is tahabbul hayat dunya ala al-akhirah. That is giving preference to the life of this world above the life of the next world. How is that done? When someone takes a bribe, for example, and thinks that he wants to enjoy maybe a big house, a nice car, he wants to go on holiday, he wants to send his children or do marriage that everybody will talk about in town, it just shows that he is preferring this life here over the next world. Why? Because in the next world, he's going to have to pay for that, right? So it's being what they call, penny wise and pound foolish, meaning it's just simply showing that, he is given preference. This life in the world is temporary, and God has said so, and we know so. It's not that we think so. We know so because people don't stay forever, and you produce children that are few years age, and they leave you. They go back to God when their time comes. You can't control that. So it's important that we realize that this preference. Now, let me be more accurate here. When we talk about preference, we are not saying that you should ignore this life. No, by all means, you should enjoy this life. But you enjoy this life only when you go by the rules of He who created this life. That's how you find the real happiness. And therefore, when you go, you get everlasting, real happiness that you don't have to consume a lot of alcohol and drugs that will destroy parts of your body and leave you in your later life, perhaps, spending more time in a hospital than you do at home. And whatever resources you have or resources of your relatives will all go into finding some, what do you call it? Medical care for yourself. So it's important that we also realize that part of the character of a Muslim, which this ayah is clearly suggesting, is the preference of al-akhirah, over the here and now, the dunya. In fact, the word dunya in Arabic means something that is near or here and now. This is what it means. While al-akhirah means later, something that comes later or comes at the end, al-akhir. So this ability to give preference to the hereafter is what determines or is part of that defining character of a Muslim. The fourth ayah talks about lisani qawmihi, that whenever Allah sends a prophet, he always sends the prophet with the language of the people to whom they are sent. Now, this is very important also, that we communicate. Now, when language is used here, it's not necessarily the actual language that we use to communicate, like we're talking English at the moment. It also means a way of communicating, a cultural context, a way of understanding society. Now, at the moment, we have a big disconnect between many of the ulama who have the knowledge of Islam but cannot communicate to the society, because the society has been fed, by a different culture, a culture that the ulama have not sat down to understand very well. And therefore, when they speak, they sometimes speak, at different wavelengths, and they do not communicate. Now, the Muslim should be like a prophet sent by Allah, who uses the language of his own people, must update himself, must be in a position to communicate with his own generation, with his own society, with his own people, as part of the demand that Allah makes for him to play the role that he is supposed to play on earth. That Muslims are supposed to update their knowledge. In fact, they are supposed to speak the languages, the physical languages of other people, because Rasulullah in a very well-known hadith says, "Man ta'allama lughata qawman amana min makr." Whoever has, whoever learns the language of a people, he is actually protecting himself from their own mischief. And the Prophet was saying this in the context of encouraging people to study languages, to study other languages. Languages around you, languages that are important in communication around the world. We should be able to do that, because as Muslims who are supposed to provide guidance, we need to communicate. But as I said, it's beyond the physical language. It also means an understanding of the civilization, the culture, the intellectual environment, the kind of drivers that make people behave the way they behave, because that then will allow you to be able to do that. And of course, the last ayah speaks to, after repeating the shift, if you like, from darkness to light in the context of the prophecy or the work of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, it talks about Ayyamullah. Ayyamullah literally here means the days of Allah. And as some Mufassirin have explained, it means basically the history of the world, the way of the world, so that we can get those consistent lessons, in the life of the world that we need to learn from, and so that we can benefit from those mistakes that other people have made. And this is why the Quran has lots of history of the prophet that came before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that we can all learn from those societies, from those people, because it's all part of our own defining characteristic. I want to, I hope this is the longest part of the three sections, and I want to now emphasize that what I've been talking about is basically the defining features of the Muslim worldview. A worldview is a frame of mind that basically explains to you what the world you are living in is made up of. It explains to you what your role in this world is going to be. It also explains to you how you go about playing this particular role. Now, I know I'm being brief in some of the things I'm saying, meaning that if I had time, and of course people can read some of these in other books that have been written on this, you will come to see that these 5 ayahs basically define the worldview of a Muslim. It is the worldview that gives you your value system. So the value system of Islam is a product of this worldview. It establishes an ontology, a hierarchy of being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his prophets, uh, 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 the ulama, those who know, because knowledge is important in this worldview, and it flows like that. So you have some kind of hierarchy of being, from which you also extract your own theory of knowledge, epistemology, from which you then know what truths to pursue and what falsehood to avoid. And that is what basically gives you the value system that you operate. I want to say on happiness that people might want to read the work of a psychotherapist, a medical doctor who got trapped in the Nazi detention camp and brought out his experiences. But after he came out in the 40s, he also went to places like Sweden. Later on, he went to America, and he carried out empirical studies. And he found out that the real thing that gives happiness in life, now this is not a Muslim, he just did an empirical study, and the people he studied are diverse in their culture and their civilization, even though the context is basically Europe and America. But he discovered that the real thing that gives people happiness is the meaning to their lives. If they cannot find a meaning to life, if they cannot find a worldview that satisfies, the craving of human nature, then they will never be able to live a happy life. So, and of course, he did a lot of interviews, so you can read the details there. But I just want to say this is one of the major, I think, components. And there are passages in the Quran similar to this, but I found this particular group of 5 ayahs in Surah Ibrahim as one that has, in a very short kind of or in a few words, have brought together different components of this worldview of Islam. Now, the next few ayahs that I want to, which again is a major character or feature of Muslim character, which has to play a role in contemporary times, is when you go to Surah Al-Mulk towards the end, you will come across 3 ayahs that speak to something that is very key. أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ أَحَدًا أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِيًّا عَلَى صِرَاطٍ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي ذَرَأَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَإِلَيْهِ تُحْشَرُونَ. So these 3 verses, again coming in Surah Al-Mulk, if I have time, I'll come back to why I took Ibrahim, Mulk, and Nazia, but let me now concentrate on the content. It's essentially a rhetorical question, a question whose answer is obvious. So it's not being asked because the answer is not known. It is being asked so that attention can be drawn more to the answer. So when Allah says, "Afaman yamshi mukibban," it's a kind of example. The person who is walking with his head down, he cannot see his front, he cannot see where he is going. Can he be more guided than the person who is looking exactly where he is going? So the obvious answer is no. The person who is looking at where he's going straight, being aware of his environment, is more likely to get where he's going, wherever he's going. It is more likely to avoid the pitfalls on the road and to get to where he wants to go safely. This other person is unlikely to make it. I mean, this basically. But then the immediate answer is, قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ. Tell them or remind them, it is Allah who actually created them. وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ, and give you the ability to hear. وَالْبَصْرَ, this is the ability to see. وَالْأَفْئِدَةِ, Al-Af'ida is direct translation is the heart, but it refers to the mind. that analyzes what you hear, analyzes what you see, and ultimately come up with an opinion or an evaluation. So these are the key senses that make a person human, right? So the fact that you have been given this ability is not for nothing. It's supposed to be used. And this is why the ayah, ends with qalila ma tashkurun. Very little thanks do you give. Thanks here not in the literal sense of alhamdulillah, and we say alhamdulillah all the time, but also in terms of the fact that shukr is often used in the Quran as utilizing what Allah has given you. So meaning like you make very little use of your senses, even as you have been given the ability to listen, even as you have been given the ability to see, even as you have the ability to analyze what you hear, what you see, and come up with something rational, good for you, yet you have made very little. So this is an invitation to increase the level of use of our senses. And if you look at the first ayah that talks about a person walking, it's like you have a job to do, you have a place to go, you have a mission to accomplish. For the purpose of that mission, you will need this. You will need your hearing, you will need your seeing, you will need your brain and your mind to analyze and to use. What basically this ayah is talking about, it is basically clear that we need to leverage the knowledge that we acquire. We need to use this knowledge to plan. We need to use this knowledge to prioritize. And so in the Muslim character, you have to leverage what you do on knowledge, and you have to use this knowledge to plan. You need to use this knowledge to prioritize, so that your life is going to be a life that is leveraged on knowledge, a life that is planned, not just anyhow, because the impression sometimes is given, and this is obviously wrong, is because people don't read the Quran, or if they read, they don't understand it. And this is not the only place Allah talks about planning, talks about, but this is a place where He has brought it, very, very clearly in this rhetorical form, So planning is key to the character of a Muslim. And when he plans based on knowledge. And when he uses knowledge, that knowledge gives him he prioritizes. He asks the question, what is important in life? What is most important in life? Is it building nice houses? I'm not saying you shouldn't. If you have the opportunity, please do so. It's all part of what Allah wants you to do, but that should not be a priority ahead of other things. So you have to have your own scale. You have to develop your own scale. And this idea of developing scale or hierarchy of needs, or hierarchy of things, there are a lot of books written right from the Greek times about the nature of things, the hierarchy of things. So human mind has always been trying to see how can he develop some form of hierarchy, because there are hundreds of other things to do. So every day, so you have to choose, because the 24 hours a day won't take all the things that you want to do. So you have to learn to prioritize all the time. And life is about prioritization. It's about making choices, but you have to have informed choices. You have to use your ears, your eyes, your brain, your total ability that Allah has given you. It means you have to read, you have to listen, you have to. But what is important, based on what you have in terms of knowledge, you need to work towards prioritization. Like I said, in this matter, you have a number of empirical studies that have been have tried to give men some kind of hierarchy of needs. And that is Maslow. Recently somebody made reference to Maslow's hierarchy of need. Maslow is an economist in the 40s, in the 1940s. And also you have Amartya Sen that have written a lot of books on this. One of the key books is Development as Freedom. And that particular is important because it relates development not in terms of just buildings or some magnificent glitters, no, but in terms of the quality of the human life. And that's what actually is development, because development is directed by the human mind, but it's not quantified only in terms of physical presence of this or that. No, it's the quality, and it takes away that discussion into a more sort of more productive kind of thing. And the last part, and I'm doing this quite conscious of the fact that maybe some of the points I'm making are not coming very clear to some, so that hopefully we can have time to do questions and answers, because I have a lot to put in out within the shortest possible time. So the last bit is the one in the passage in Surah An-Nazi'ah. Again, Surah An-Nazi'ah is one of these surahs when Allah is going to bring something very profound, very big, very important. It draws your attention to so many things that puts your mind alert and really puts you in your place, so to speak. And this passage starts from Antum ashaddu khalqan amis sama banaha رفع سمكها فسواها واغطش ليلها واخرج ضحاها والارض ذلك بعد ذلك ضحاها اخرج منها ماءها ومرآها والجبال ارساها متاعا لكم ولانعامكم فاذا جاءت الطامة الكبرى. Now this is the message. Now previously what Allah is basically saying is basically asking men, challenging men. I created you. Do you think you men are more difficult to create, or the universe? Look at the celestial bodies. Now, when you see the size of the earth, those of you who have cared to check, in the celestial world, where the Mars and the Sun and so many other planets are, I mean, the earth represents, I don't know if it's up to a dot. It is such a tiny, insignificant piece of the celestial world. I mean, if you look at the celestial bodies, the universe. Now, look at man on the earth. It's not up to a dot. So Allah is asking him, are you, man, more difficult to create, or the universe? Of course, this is, again, a rhetorical question. And then, of course, it reminds man that it's Allah who brought the rain from the sky so that you can have food to eat, and you are cattle, and you are other this and this and this and this and this, all this to prepare him for this particular point. Now, when the real big event, sometimes it's called disaster, but basically it's a big significant event comes. وإذا جاءت الطامة الكبرى يوم يتذكر الإنسان ما سعى وبرزت الجحيم لمن يرى فأما من طغى وآثر الحياة الدنيا فإن الجحيم هي المأوى وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونحى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى. Now, when the big event comes, man will now recall everything that he has done in his life on earth. This is referring to the day of judgment. He will remember everything that he has done, the good, the bad, and the ugly, whatever he has done. He will remember, because these things are recorded in ways that we may not quite understand now. So he will remember all this. And then the fire, Jahannam, is going to be brought for everybody to see. And it should be roaring with a lot of, if you like, frightening noises. And then Allah says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ طَغَى, those who rebel against God. وَآثَرَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, they enjoyed without any regulation or limit the life of this world, meaning they did what they wanted. He said, there is no doubt these people are the ones who are going to go to this hellfire. And then he said, wa amma, but those man khafa maqama rabbihi, those who fear standing in front of their Lord. And this has to do with the knowledge of Allah and the knowledge of what is going to happen. But that is not enough. وَنَحَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ, and stopped the soul from taking or from doing what the soul wants to. In actual, restraining the soul from its cravings. And the soul has terrible cravings. إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. By its very nature, the soul has this tendency for evil, except those who have got the rahmah of Allah. Now, it's part of our job to tame it, to restrain it, to curtail it. Our failure to curtail it can easily take us into Jahannam. So ultimately, what this passage is talking about is the fact that we have got to use the discipline. We have to acquire the discipline to check our souls and its tendency for evil. We have got to be able to restrain it. In other words, we have to be able to postpone gratification. And gratification will come in Al-Jannah, but we have to be able to, and so the measure of our success is this ability. And again, in this respect, there are empirical studies carried out that have shown, and not by Muslims, but this is basically human character, which a lot of research tend to reinforce what we as Muslims know or should know. I always refer people to, and there must be a number of studies along that line, but the more famous one is the marshmallow test that was carried in UCLA, that is University College Los Angeles in the US. In the 60s, I think, the children of kindergarten age were given some task to do, and they were given gifts, or after completing a task, you'd be given something to like a sweet. The marshmallow sweet actually was what was given to them, which was a very popular sweet with children at that time. And during that, experiment, or what that experiment basically found out was that as more people, those who were, okay, let me put it this way. When they complete their task, they are given a choice whether to take their marshmallow test immediately, marshmallow sweet immediately, or to wait a little and then they get their sweet after some moments. In other words, they want to find out who are those children with the emotional intelligence to be able to restrain themselves or to be able to postpone gratification. And they followed their career throughout their lives later, and they discovered that those who were able to restrain their soul and to postpone gratification were those who were actually the successful ones among them. Basically reinforcing the fact that that ability to restrain our souls, to restrain that tendencies in us to do wrong things, are the ones that are able to succeed here, and invariably, if you are Muslims and you have done the right thing, in the hereafter. So the point I just want to make is that in defining the Muslim character or personality in our contemporary world, I think we have to realize first that the Muslim character is built on certain understanding. One, that man is a creation of Allah and is living in a world that has been created by Allah, and he has a role to play. His life has meaning, which is essentially to serve his, Allah's creatures along the lines that Allah has indicated. And to be able to do that, Allah has given him the ability to listen, to see, to think, and therefore leverage what he's going to do on knowledge, and the ability to plan, and the ability to plan, and the ability to prioritize, and the ability to gain the strength of restraining his soul. These are the kind of things that should define the Muslim character, the Muslim personality, and this is the kind of personality or character that is going to lead Muslim to a very blissful life here in this world and a blissful life in the hereafter. So I will stop here in the hope that things that are not clear, I will have time to clarify, or areas that I have not touched, if there is time, I will try within my limited area of knowledge. أقولي قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, Doctor. Jazakumullah anna kulla khair. Thank you so very much. I believe those who are here with us everybody would have taken something home today with regards to what a Muslim needs to look at in terms of developing his or her character in order not to lose the world and the hereafter, or to lose both of them, or to lose each and any of the two. We have been privileged, alhamdulillah, and to get a lot of participants. This, in fact, it is a record for S.A.I.D, alhamdulillah, today to receive the maximum number of, or exceeding even our quota of 100 participants. And we thank you also very much. I have seen a lot of personality around. Kindly let me share with Dr. A screen of comments that he has received, particularly when he asked that question, which is a major question: what really do we consider life or death? There were some comments about, and I'm sure Doctor would like to look at them and then comment on them. If there is any other question that can be directly, submitted to Doctor, kindly raise your hand as I take Doctor through these slides if he has any comment about them regarding what we define life to be. So let me share this with Doctor. 1 minute. Okay, so these are some of the comments that we have received, Doctor. This one is Ibrahim Anwar, who says death is the absence of life after its existence, and the absence of life. Well, maybe he just repeated this. Death is the absence of life after its existence, and the absence of life after its existence. Okay. And the other one from Dr. Abdulrazak Okain, who says death is an inevitable consequence of life. And then the other one from Ibrahim Sabo says, life is the series of being alive, and death is an aspect of being non-alive. Death must come to everyone as it's mentioned in the Quran. So this is the first slide. Any comment on that, Doctor?
Well, like I said, the idea of the question is not to arrive at a consensus answer, but to basically raise that point that in trying to understand what you think you know, you suddenly realize that there is a lot more that you need to know. For example, I mean, from what I've seen here, unless I think is in the absence of life, somebody can say basically the soul doesn't die, right? So it transits. from the physical body on earth to its permanent abode. It's like it has come into some kind of territory for a while and is going back to its road. So there are so many ways of looking at it, and there is no one single answer. And the idea is not to arrive at one single answer, but just to make you realize that there are lots of ways of looking at things, but you have to put your attention into it to be able to, and of course, the objective is to just stimulate your mind to improve on your clarity, to improve on your accuracy, to improve in your precision in whatever you do, whatever you think, whatever you read, subsequently. So this is just a small exercise. If we go into it, then there will be a lot to be said. But the whole idea is to simply raise, this awareness for accuracy and for clarity in discussions.
Jazakumullah.
I enjoyed the answers that I've received now.
Oh, okay. We have had also comments from this Dr. Aliyu Dairu, who also said that life is temporary opportunity given by Allah to human being and other creations as a trial to identify the best among people. Another one also from Rabbi Usabo, who said, death is a severe absence to life in the sense that one shall test its it says life is an opportunity for one to conduct all the activities in a specific period of time. And I'm sure, Doctor, this did mention the importance of considering time in terms of what a human being considers life to be. Other comments are here. This is from Swala Abdullah, who says, death is when the human soul is taken out of the body, thereby rendering the body lifeless, motionless, etc. And this one also from M. Lawan, who says death is the separation between human body and soul. And then this is from engineer Hawa Nuni, who says death is a transition incompatibility, accomplishment and purification of soul. Another one from Jamal Adam, who says death is the loss of consciousness. And this is from Luqman Bugaje, who says life is a journey, death is the destination. Yes, so these are some of the comments that we have received. Another one from Ahmed Bashir, who says life is individual. Its highest form so far is the ego, in which the individual becomes a self-contained inclusive center. Another one from Tawfiq Thani Muhammad says life and death have been defined by Allah in the second verse of Surah Al-Mulk as a test, in order to test us who among us would do his or her utmost best according to the little time he or she has been given in life. And then finally, this one is from Usman Sani Abubakar, who says life to me is a borrowed time, which death is the actual, while death is the actual time. Okay, so these are the comments that I have had, but there is from Doc, this is going directly to Doc. I think there was a question that somebody was asking about the name of that psychotherapist whom Doctor did mention during his submission. If Doctor can assist with the
name is Viktor Frankl, but Viktor, I think with a K. Viktor Frankl. Frankl is Frankal. Frankl. He wrote a number of books, but the key book here is Man's Search for Meaning.
Okay,
you can Google it. Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning.
Okay.
You can Google it in the internet.
Inshallah. Inshallah. Okay, sir. Jazakumullah khair. Okay, so I can see the hands of Doc, if you don't mind, our time is already fast spent before I get your final comment. But I can see the hands of, I have in the presence here, Professor Salisu Shehu, whom I think is around, and Professor Aisha Garba Habib. Thank you so very much for attending. I don't know if they would like to also share one or two words, but I can see the hands of Kabir Sharif. Are you asking a question? Maybe Doctor will give the opportunity to this hand which has been up from the beginning of Brother
I have
Kabir.
no objection. I have no objection. So let's proceed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Doctor. I also thank the coordinators of the program. Actually, although I joined the session late due to the maximum participants, I do have a question to Doctor about his last comment on postponing gratification. My question is, how can a Muslim train himself to coach himself in postponing gratification? It has to do with some form of anxiety or some sort of control or self-motivation. How can someone train himself to be able to postpone gratification? Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do I, Imam Said, do I proceed
sir.
to just?
Go ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, this looks like a technical question where psychologists might have, or psychotherapists may have developed techniques, and I'm sure there would be techniques to be able to strengthen. But from the Islamic regions that I have made, part of what gives you that strength is that consciousness of the fact that you are eventually going to go back to Allah.
Inshallah.
And for the great, I mean, for the barakah and for all the good things that He has done, you will find it difficult to even stand in front of Him, having violated some of the rules He has set for you. So this is the worry. So that consciousness will give you the strength to be able to actually. So it is those who do not have the consciousness of Allah in them, and the consciousness of the fact that there will be consequences for their action, or that have belittled or have doubt in the consequences that they read about in the Quran or they listen to people talking about. These are the people who are more likely to fail to restrain themselves. And this is not to say that, because you have the knowledge, you will always do the right thing. A human being has his own limits in terms of failing, but the fact that there is that constant effort, you will find yourself invariably always trying to do the right thing, and you master the techniques. So it all starts from consciousness. But like I said, there must be techniques which psychotherapists might advise on how to strengthen that character, that resolve to be able to stay on the right path.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. And I can see I'm giving the last person to ask a question so that Doctor will end it. We've spent our time already. This person has no name, but is on Huawei Y7P. We've already advised that you give us your first name. Kindly unmute yourself. You've raised your hand. Huawei Y7P. Unmute yourself and ask the question, please. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, or maybe it's just a mistakenly done. Okay, Doctor, thank you so very much for the presentation, and we in S.A.I.D are very, very glad that at least we have you today. We have intended to have you as, in fact, the first person to give us the pep talk since we started, but Alhamdulillah, kindly give us your final comment or your final words with regards to today's discussion, as well as to the Academy as a young institution. So,
okay, then thank you very much. I think I have basically tried to do two things. This is a very important issue of having a Muslim personality, we need to understand as Muslims what makes us different from others. At the moment, in terms of real life in society that we see, we don't find that difference. Even though Muslims will still pray, they will still go to Hajj, they will give zakah, I suppose, they will do a number of things. But that has not stopped them from stealing from public resources. That has not stopped them from telling lies. That has not stopped them from doing so many other things that have become common. And therefore, I just want to make the point, it's not enough to simply be Muslim and do these other things without this character. In actual fact, it is the character that you are able to exhibit that is the ultimate in Islam, because it's the one that's actually going to guide you back to Al-Jannah. So it's important that you build that character, and you have to have the conviction that Allah is the most important person to please, not anybody else, not even your parents. You respect your parents, you are supposed to give them whatever you can, but the primacy of Allah in your life must be there all the time. And it is this primacy of Allah in your life that is going to dissuade you from doing certain things that are wrong. Meaning that you have got to make sure that it is Allah that basically that you value, that you care about his own opinion. He himself, in another place in the Quran, has warned us about the idea of doing things because of people. He says, أَتَخْشَى النَّاسَ وَاللَّهُ أَحَقُّ أَن تَخْشَاهُ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Is it people that you fear? Isn't it God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you should fear if you are truly believers? Meaning we have to bring that. And I want to address that issue of the fact that Muslims are found doing everything that is wrong that other non-Muslims are doing, while they think by praying, by fasting, by going to Hajj, by doing things that is still making them Muslim. I think the defining feature of a Muslim is not so much the prayer, is not so much the zakah, is not so much the fasting, like his own character, like his own personality. Because ultimately the prayers, the zakat are supposed to actually reinforce that personality. Since salat itself is supposed to reinforce that personality. I mean, the Quran is very clear about salat tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. So we need to make sure that we understand that it is the character ultimately that really matters. And we need to see how we can build it. And in this day and age, we have to find ways of building that character, because there are lots of other distractions, that happen. The social media, the movie industry, the entertainment world, the marketing that goes out there. People are being sold all manners of products. Everything is taking away our attention. So we need to double our effort. And educationists like Professor Salisu, who is here, need to design, content in our education and continuing education, how we can, in spite of all these distractions, can come back. What I've tried to do is to show the roots of some of these ideas in the Quran. And they are not the only ones, there are many, and I can't claim to know all of them. And in doing so, I want to encourage people to go back to the Quran with the view to bringing out of it things that can guide and shape their lives, here.
Doctor, I'm sorry, Doctor. I'm sure I'm sorry you are rounding up, but there was a question here which I skipped, and I think in terms of what you are just making, the point you are making in our consistency in terms of our ibadah and also maintaining our connection to Allah, there was a question that I skipped. Very sorry to say that, from Abdul Salam, who says, please, doctor, my question is, in the world where people are seen as extremists for trying to safeguard their deen by abiding by its rules, how can one maintain a very sound Islamic identity at all times, especially in the secular states like ours? I think this question needs to be tapped in.
That brings me to the issue of communication and context. You know, there is a lot that we need to do in exhibiting our Islam, because I want to show that people in the secular space is, you know, they find anything religious irritating, which is understandable, because they are carrying something that is very fragile. I mean, the secular idea is a fragile idea. It doesn't hold. Even those who practice it don't have confidence in it, because the moment you throw away, I mean, you throw out 1, 2, 3 questions, they become confused. So there is a sense in which they try to overprotect the secular space, and they see you as a threat, very much like what even Taymiyyah says. You know, when you go and sit down, or if you find people sitting down taking alcohol, and let's just say you took a chair and you sit down there, you know, you are not taking alcohol. You didn't ask them not to take alcohol, but your presence there pricks their conscience, and they become uncomfortable until they can also convince you to join them. So that irritation, you know, should be understood. But the thing to do is to find a language of communication, and this we have not developed. I mean, the language of our ulama is an authoritarian language, and you can see that the Quran, when it engages the non-Muslims, you know, it doesn't always use authoritarian. It invites people to think, to reflect. So I think we need to make those who are secular feel comfortable and draw them into an argument gradually, not to appear to them as a threat. Because again, there are ayahs of the Quran that talk about the fact that you should give those who are not Muslims, non-Muslims, the opportunity to even understand Islam. And that opportunity means that you tolerate them up to a point. You tolerate them so that you can engage them. So I think what is important is that we strengthen ourselves, but also we need to develop means of communication. And this is something that I think can be a whole topic of another lecture. How do we as Muslims communicate with the secular or non-Muslim, you know, elements in ways that will allow us to actually convey the message without frightening them, without making them feel uncomfortable in any way.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, Doctor. And so as you give us your final comments, I can still remember that you did mention the aspect of what really constitute happiness. And so if you can just conclude with the question of happiness, particularly when today a lot of people are taking the technology of today and how to use it to the benefit of oneself, and the use of technology, the use of social media. In fact, some marriages have even gone wayward because of the use of the social media. They seem to feel that that will give them the happiness they need of the world, as far as they can just Google or search for anything they want at any time and get it. So, Doctor, generally everybody wants to be happy here and hereafter. So, at the end of this discussion, can you just touch on that bit of happiness which you mentioned earlier? What really constitutes happiness for us as an ummah?
Okay, the pursuit of happiness is part of human cravings. I mean, human beings are wired in such a way that they crave for happiness and they look for it. The real issue is happiness that will make you really happy and will not harm you in the process is happiness that is sustainable, that can bring you increasing happiness Now, the path to that kind of happiness is a path that has been charted out and has been explained by some ulama, a lot of them Sufis, that basically uh, train the mind to understand the reality of the world. And the reality of the world is that one is temporary, two, uh, it is designed to, if you like, it's designed to allow man up to a particular level. There are certain things. So if you know your limits, then you know exactly the area to tread. And it is the knowledge of this that will guide you into what constitutes, real happiness, what to pursue and what not to pursue. In ultimately, what many people think is happiness, which is outside the scope that Islam has allowed, never really gives them happiness, because they take whatever they take or they pursue whatever they pursue, but ultimately when they get there, they don't find that happiness, and they still have to come back to look for it. And that's what you find with celebrities in the West. They become, they get all the money, they get all the attention, they get everything, and then they end up doing yoga, or they go to Himalayas, or they find some other place, some the process of, taking drugs. And in that itself is, enough to show that that is not happiness. On the other hand, the happiness that we are looking for that is sustainable is the happiness of helping others. You get a lot of joy in helping people. You get a lot of joy in getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Through dhikr, through reading the Quran, through so many other things. But you have to make your mind, become informed by all that Allah and the Prophet has said, so that you will now pursue that path, and you become. I mean, if you pursue collection of money, you realize that after collecting all the money, you still will not be happy. But if you share what little you have, you find that you'll be happy. And there are many people, and we can read these stories even off the internet, that have, tried to be happy, and they failed. Eventually, by some fate, incidents, some kind of accident of fate, they run into either somebody who advised them, or they just run into starting to help people, and then they realize, that that's the kind of happiness they've been looking for. So basically, happiness comes from sharing what little you have. It comes from getting closer to your creator. It comes, to doing good generally and avoiding evil. And that is where you get the real happiness, that people are looking for. There are books that have been written along these lines by Muslim scholars, which time will not allow for me to delve into, but it's something that we can get somebody someday to speak on this particular issue. And if I happen to be around, I can also offer to
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, sir. Inshallah. Thank you so very much. Jazakumullah anna kulli khair. And we would like to thank all those who participated far away from Hong Kong, Malaysia, Nigeria, USA, Canada, and the personalities that have graciously attended today's discussion. Professor Salisu Shehu, thank you so much. Professor Aisha, Dr. Rabiat Amma, our own Dr. Abdul Razak from Ghana, and Rabiat Amma from Ghana. Jazakumullah anna kulli khair. All those whom we do not know, we thank you so much. All the Bugaje family, I can see the Bugajes around. You've made it very, very, very interactive, and we thank you all. Jazakumullah anna kulli khair. And inshallah, we have the recordings, which we will send through the link. We will send the link of the YouTube channel to all those who have submitted their emails, as we mentioned. Inshallah, we'll send it so that everybody will have access, and those who are not able or who were not able to do so to attend will also have the opportunity to view the recording. Finally, Doctor, we wish you the best of health, and also all our regards to the family. Jazakumullah anna kulla khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام ورحمة الله.